Since 1976, the state of Arkansas has executed 31 death row inmates. While fewer than in Texas among them were individuals whose crimes shook the entire United States, from father who killed 16 family members during Christmas to a mother who injected her 2 children with lethal drugs before attempting to take her own life, to an inmate who escaped prison by hiding in a barrel of waste, only to kill again soon after. Each was different, yet they all shared one moment in common: entering the execution chamber, eating their last meal, and speaking their final words. Some whispered tearful apologies, others issued cold defiance. Some said nothing at all in a silence that chilled the room. In today's video, we'll take a journey through the lives and final moments of 10 of the most brutal death row inmates executed in Arkansas, men who not only horrified the public with their crimes, but left a haunting imprint on American legal history through their final hours. Before we begin, leave a comment: which country or state are you watching this from? Let's see how far these stories have traveled. Now, let's meet the first. First, Ronald Gene Simmons. Christmas week is supposed to be a time for reunion warmth and joy. But in the year 1987 in Dover, Arkansas, a remote rural town, the name Ronald Gene Simmons turned a family gathering into one of the bloodiest nightmares in modern American history. Ronald Gene Simmons, then 47, was a retired serviceman with 22 years of duty in both the Navy and the Air Force. Between 1957 and 1979, he rose to the rank of Master Sergeant and was known for his discipline and strict demeanor. After retiring, Simmons moved with his wife and 7 children to a secluded farm in Dover. There were no phones, no television, no neighbors. The family lived under the absolute control of a cold and silent patriarch. On December 22, 1987, Simmons began a killing spree that lasted 7 days. He started by ending the lives of his wife and several family members in an act of extreme violence. Over the following days, he methodically killed each of his children: 17-year-old Loretta, 14-year-old Eddie, 11-year-old Marianne, and 8-year-old Rebecca, disposing of their bodies behind the house as if they were items no longer needed. On December 26th, the older children and grandchildren returned home for what should have been a warm holiday visit. Instead, it became a deadly trap. Simmons shot his son William II, his daughter-in-law Renata, and their 20-month-old child. He then murdered his own daughter Sheila, who had previously accused him of incest and borne his child. Sheila's husband and their 2 children, 7-year-old Sylvia and 21-month-old Michael, were also killed. All 14 family members were murdered without a single shot heard outside their decaying wooden cabin in the silent woods. But Simmons did not stop there. On December 28th, he drove to Russellville, where he had previously worked. He shot and killed Kathy Kendrick, a former colleague who had rejected his advances. Then he stormed into Taylor Oil Company, where he shot J.D. Chaffin to death and wounded 3 others during a senseless rampage. Afterwards, Simmons calmly walked into the police station and surrendered without regret, without resistance. At his 1989 trial, Simmons waived all appeals, telling the court directly, "I want to be executed and I want it to happen as soon as possible." On June 25, 1990, Ronald Gene Simmons was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins Unit Prison in Arkansas. It was the state's first execution in nearly 3 decades and one of the most widely supported by the public. His last meal, a chef's salad cherry Kool-Aid and strawberry shortcake, a cold choice with no hint of remorse. His final words: "Justice delayed finally be done is justifiable homicide. No apology, no regret." Just a chilling statement from a man who slaughtered his entire family. The case of Ronald Gene Simmons remains the most horrifying family massacre in United States history. It stands as a dark symbol of what can happen when control, isolation, and mental instability simmer in silence for too long. A tragedy that spanned a lifetime and ended in the blood of those who shared his name. Second, Clay King Smith. On March 25, 1998, Clay King Smith, then 24 years old, took the lives of 5 people inside the home he once called his sanctuary. Among them was his longtime girlfriend, Misty Irwin, who was just 20 years old. There was Shelley Sorg, a visiting friend, and her 2 small children, 5-year-old Sean and 3-year-old Taylor. The 5th victim was 12-year-old Samantha Rhodes, a neighbor who had come to babysit. When police arrived, the crime scene stunned the entire investigation team into silence. Everything was unnaturally quiet, except for the sense of horror in the air. The victims' bodies were found in different parts of the house. No loud screams, no signs of a major struggle, just lives extinguished with cold, calculated cruelty. Clay did not run. Just hours after the killings, he called the police himself and confessed to everything. He blamed no one, made no excuses. In his statement, he said, "I know I don't deserve to live." From that moment on, Smith became one of the rare inmates who voluntarily gave up all rights to appeal. He refused legal defense, didn't ask for a reduced sentence, and never cited mental illness or past trauma. He simply repeated, "One thing I did, evil, and I must pay for it." No one knows exactly what triggered Clay King Smith's explosion of violence. Some pointed to alcohol abuse, others mentioned a history of family trauma. But even until the end, he could not explain why that one afternoon in March turned into a tragedy that could never be undone. On May 8, 2001, at the Cummins Unit Prison in Arkansas, Clay King Smith was executed by lethal injection. He refused his final meal, perhaps in an effort to shorten the time he had left to face himself. His final words, though brief, were an attempt to reach those he had hurt the most. "I want to say I'm sorry for what I did to the victims' families. I hope your hearts can heal. I love my family. I love my family." He killed 5 people, including children. Clay King Smith's crimes went far beyond a moment of rage or a lapse in control. But in the end, he did not flee. He chose to face it. The question that lingers is this: can remorse ever be enough when 5 lives are lost forever? Third, Christina Marie Riggs. Christina Marie Riggs, a licensed nurse, committed an unthinkable act on November 4, 1997 in Sherwood, Arkansas. She killed her 2 children, 5-year-old Justin Dalton Thomas and 2-year-old Shelby Alexis Riggs. She first gave them antidepressants to make them sleepy. Then she injected Justin with potassium chloride. When he woke up in pain, she administered morphine and eventually smothered him with a pillow. She smothered Shelby without giving her any drugs. Afterward, Riggs attempted suicide by swallowing 28 Elavil tablets and injecting herself with potassium chloride, but she survived. She was arrested at the scene semi-conscious, lying next to the bodies of her children, and surrounded by evidence of her suicide attempt. She did not resist. When police asked why she had done it, her answer was chilling in its softness: "I didn't want them to live without their mother." At trial, Christina Marie Riggs did not try to defend herself. She waived her right to appeal and rejected help from attorneys. When asked what she wanted from the sentence, she said, "I want to be with my children." The courtroom fell silent, caught between the heartbreaking pain of a mother and the horror of her crime. The court sentenced her to death. Riggs accepted it as a release, not a punishment. She became the first woman executed in Arkansas since 1845, a grim milestone in the state's legal history. On May 2, 2000, Christina entered the execution chamber at the Cummins unit dressed in white. She did not tremble. She did not object. Her last meal was pizza salad, strawberry shortcake, and lemonade simple sweet, like something she might have shared with her children, if the darkness had not taken over. Her final words, full of pain and love: "There is no way words can express how sorry I am for taking the lives of my babies. I can never replace them or erase the pain I've caused to everyone who knew and loved them. I love my babies." Christina Riggs did not blame antidepressants. She did not cite postpartum depression, though both might have been true. She chose instead to shoulder all the guilt fully and desperately. Her case shook the nation. It was not only the tragedy of 2 young lives, but also a warning, a painful cry about the silence of depression, about a system too slow to recognize when a mother is drowning, and about a form of justice that sometimes arrives too late and too cold. Fourth, Ledell Lee. On February 9, 1993, in the city of Jacksonville, Arkansas, 26-year-old bank employee Deborah Reese was home alone while her husband was away. That morning, she called her mother to say a strange man was knocking at her door. Less than an hour later, Deborah was found dead in her bedroom, brutally assaulted. She suffered severe injuries from a weapon later identified as a metal fitness bar, ironically a self-defense gift from her husband. That same day, police arrested Ledell Lee, a local man who lived nearby. Witnesses claimed they had seen him near the scene, and authorities alleged he had spent about $300 believed to have been stolen from the victim. From the moment of his arrest until his trial 2 years later in 1995, Ledell Lee maintained his innocence. Nonetheless, he was convicted and sentenced to death. The legal process surrounding his case raised serious concerns. Lee's defense attorney was accused of being intoxicated during key arguments and failed to call a single witness on Lee's behalf. The presiding judge was later revealed to be romantically involved with the prosecutor, a conflict of interest never disclosed at the time. Most disturbingly, DNA evidence from the scene, including hair, blood, and fingerprints, was never properly tested. For more than 2 decades, Lee repeatedly requested DNA testing, not to delay his execution, but to prove his innocence. Arkansas courts denied every request. On April 20, 2017, Ledell Lee was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins Unit Prison. He was the first person executed in the state in over a decade. Lee declined a final meal. Instead, he received Holy Communion, a solemn act of faith and a plea for redemption. His last words were brief, "I am an innocent man." At the time, many doubted him. But in 2021, 4 years after his death, a nonprofit organization finally obtained permission to test the forensic evidence. The results revealed DNA from an unidentified man, not Lee, on the murder weapon and on a bloody shirt from the scene. Justice had finally stirred, but far too late. For Ledell Lee, death came before truth. And once again, America was left confronting an unanswered question. Are we executing the wrong people? His case has become a symbol of the flaws in the criminal justice system, challenging the fairness and reliability of capital punishment itself. 5th, Jack Harold Jones, Jr. On June 6, 1995, the small town of Bald Knob, Arkansas was shaken by the horrific murder of 34-year-old accountant Mary Phillips. She had been raped and killed inside her quiet family-owned office, a place no one would have expected to become the scene of such brutality. Even more heartbreaking, Mary's 11-year-old daughter Lacey Phillips was in the office that day. She was attacked so violently that authorities initially believed she had not survived. But miraculously, Lacey lived. And from her testimony, investigators learned the identity of the killer, a stranger with tattoos and a deep, cold voice. That man was Jack Harold Jones, Jr., a convicted offender with a past of violent sexual crimes. He had previously served time, had been released, and now had struck again, this time leaving a mother dead and a child forever scarred. Jones was arrested the same day and sentenced to death in 1996. But the horror didn't stop there. While he awaited execution, his DNA was entered into the National CODIS database. It matched evidence from a 1983 murder in Florida, a case for which another man had already been wrongfully convicted and imprisoned for decades. Jack Jones' story was not just one of crime. It was also a grim reflection of a justice system that had once again failed. On April 24, 2017, Jack Harold Jones, Jr. was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins Unit. It was one of 2 executions carried out that night, the first double execution in any U.S. state since 2000. His last meal, fried chicken French fries with tartar sauce, beef jerky, 3 candy bars, a chocolate milkshake, and fruit punch, an oddly sweet indulgence for someone who caused so much pain. His final words were simple, "I'm sorry. I hurt a lot of people." But can an apology ever be enough when a child must live with trauma for the rest of her life? When another innocent man lost years behind bars because of him, the case of Jack Harold Jones, Jr. did not just end a life. It revealed the heartbreaking gaps in justice and the human cost of getting it wrong. 6th, Marcel Wayne Williams. On the early morning of November 20, 1994 in Jacksonville, Arkansas, 22-year-old medical technician Stacy Ray Erickson, a mother of 2, stopped at a gas station on her way to work. There she was approached by 24-year-old Marcel Wayne Williams, who threatened her with a gun. Williams forced Erickson into her car and drove her to several ATMs where he made her withdraw a total of $350. He then took her to an area near the Arkansas River where he sexually assaulted her and ultimately caused her death. Her body was buried in a shallow grave near the scene. 9 days later, Williams was arrested in connection with 2 other rape cases. During interrogation, he admitted to kidnapping Erickson but denied killing her. However, forensic evidence and investigative findings confirmed that she died from a deliberate and violent assault. On January 14, 1997, Williams was sentenced to death for kidnapping, rape, and murder. He also received 3 life sentences and 70 years for the other assaults. His final meal included 3 pieces of fried chicken French fries, with ketchup nachos with chili and cheese, jalapenos ice cream, banana pudding, and 2 cans of Mountain Dew. Williams offered no final words before his execution. On April 24, 2017, he was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins unit in Arkansas. He was the second person executed that night, following Jack Harold Jones Jr., marking the first time since the year 2000 that any U.S. state carried out 2 executions in a single day. The case of Marcel Wayne Williams remains a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of violence and the critical importance of delivering justice with precision and care. 7th, Don William Davis. On October 12, 1990, in the city of Rogers, Arkansas, 62-year-old Jane Daniel, who lived alone, became the victim of a chilling home invasion. When she encountered an intruder in her home, she had no time to react. The intruder, 28-year-old Don William Davis, pulled out a handgun and fatally shot her. Davis then stole jewelry, electronics, and other valuables before fleeing without leaving clear evidence behind. However, he was captured shortly after. The case gained public attention for the sheer coldness of the crime. The victim offered no resistance, and it appeared she was killed simply to silence her. In 1992, Davis was sentenced to death along with 2 additional 40-year sentences for theft and burglary. Over the next 2 decades, he filed numerous appeals, mostly arguing for access to psychiatric experts and questioning his legal competence. All appeals were ultimately denied. He was scheduled for execution on April 17, 2017, as part of Arkansas's Unearthed historic execution schedule. However, in a last-minute intervention, the United States Supreme Court issued a stay of execution, stopping the process just moments before it was set to begin. Although he was not executed that night, Don William Davis had prepared as if it would be his final day. His last meal included fried chicken dinner rolls, Great Northern beans, mashed potatoes, strawberry shortcake, and fruit punch. His final words delivered in writing reflected a personal faith. Now, some of you may think that a person like me can't be forgiven for all the bad things I've done in this world, but I am not one of those people. And if you think I can't enter the kingdom of heaven, that's between you and your God, and that's all I have to say about that. It was not an apology, but a declaration that for him, forgiveness came through faith, not from the judgment of others. Don William Davis, one of the rare death row inmates to survive a signed execution order, became a symbol of the fragile space between life and death within the justice system. A moment where justice sometimes pauses because the clock has not yet struck. 8th, Charles Laverne Singleton. On June 1, 1979, in the town of Hamburg, Arkansas, 19-year-old Mary Lou York was brutally attacked at the small grocery store she ran. She suffered critical injuries and died on the way to the hospital. Before passing, Mary Lou was able to identify her attacker as Charles Laverne Singleton, a 20-year-old man who lived nearby. Singleton was arrested and charged with capital murder and robbery. In 1981, he was convicted and sentenced to death. But the case didn't end there. Over the years, Singleton began showing signs of schizophrenia, experiencing hallucinations, paranoia, and a disconnect from reality. He was prescribed antipsychotic medication while in prison, and only with medication was he considered mentally competent for execution. This raised a profound ethical question. Should the state be allowed to medicate a mentally ill person solely to make them legally eligible for execution? After years of legal battles, on January 6, 2004, Singleton was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins unit in Arkansas. He became the first person in the United States to be executed after being treated to restore mental competence, a decision that sent shockwaves through the fields of law and medical ethics. His final meal included a cheeseburger, fried eggplant, green tomatoes, and sweet potatoes, baked beans, potato salad donuts, and 2 vanilla milkshakes. He gave no spoken final statement. Instead, prison officials reported that he left behind a handwritten message, a lengthy note filled with religious references and declarations of faith. In it, he identified himself as Charles Singleton, anointed by God, Victor Ra Hakim. He also wrote, "The blind think I am playing a game. They deny me, reject my existence, but all people replace each other. I will not let you down. God bless." The case of Charles Laverne Singleton remains a controversial symbol of capital punishment and mental illness, where law, medicine, and morality clash in a gray area with no easy answers. 9th. Ray Rector. On March 21, 1981, in the quiet town of Conway, Arkansas, 31-year-old Ray Rector attended a gathering at a local restaurant with friends. When one member of the group was denied entry due to insufficient funds, a minor incident escalated into tragedy. In a fit of anger, Rector pulled out a handgun and fatally shot Arthur D. Criswell, a man he knew, at the scene. He then shot 2 others, leaving them critically injured. Rector fled, and the entire town was placed on high alert. 3 days later, police tracked him to his mother's house. An officer, Robert Martin, a longtime acquaintance of Rector, was sent to make the arrest. As Martin entered the home, Rector shot him in the back, killing him instantly. Moments later, Rector turned the gun on himself and fired a bullet into his own head. The suicide attempt failed. The injury destroyed roughly 3 inches of his frontal lobe, leaving him in a semi-vegetative state. His IQ dropped to around 70, and he exhibited repetitive, childlike behaviors. Despite severe cognitive impairment, Rector was tried and sentenced to death in 1982. Multiple psychiatrists testified that he could no longer understand his sentence or its consequences. Yet all appeals on mental health grounds were denied. On the night of January 24, 1992, in the execution chamber at the Cummins unit, staff struggled for over 50 minutes to find a usable vein, a challenge made worse by his deteriorating physical and mental condition. During that time, Rector moaned and breathed heavily, unclear whether from pain or fear. Witnesses described the scene as unforgettable. His last meal included steak-fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and pecan pie. But he left the pie untouched, telling guards, "I'm saving this for later." That simple childlike remark became a haunting symbol in the national debate. Should someone incapable of understanding death be executed? Rector offered no final words. But his death echoed across America. At the time, Bill Clinton, then governor of Arkansas, was running for president. He paused his campaign to personally oversee the execution, a political move seen as a statement of toughness on crime aimed at winning conservative support in the 1992 election. But the cost of that political win was the life of a man who once held a gun and died without knowing what was happening to him. 10. Kenneth Dewayne Williams. Not 1, but 4 lives were taken by Kenneth Dewayne Williams, each one a deep wound in the heart of Arkansas. In 1998, at just 19 years old, Williams kidnapped 2 college students, Dominique Hurd and Gerald Jenkins. He shot them both. Dominique died instantly, while Jarrell survived. Just a month later, he confessed to killing another man in Pine Bluff, though that victim's name was not publicly disclosed. Sentenced to life in prison without parole, Williams appeared to be off the streets for good. But just 1 year later, he escaped prison by hiding inside a container of industrial waste. What followed was a series of tragic and deadly events. He broke into the home of Cecil Boren Schott and killed him, then stole his vehicle to flee. During his escape, he crashed into the car of Michael Greenwood, a father, on his way home. Greenwood was killed instantly. In total, 4 lives lost, 2 of them after Williams was already behind bars. On April 27, 2017, Kenneth Dewayne Williams was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins unit in Arkansas. His execution was the final in a sequence of 4 carried out within 8 days, a stretch that placed Arkansas at the center of a national debate over the morality of capital punishment. His last meal included 2 pieces of fried chicken, sweet rice, barbecued pinto beans, a slice of bread, a peanut butter cookie, and a cinnamon roll. His final words, "I humbly extend my sincerest apology to the families I have senselessly wronged and deprived of their loved ones. The crimes I perpetrated were senseless, extremely hurtful, and inexcusable. I am no longer the person I once was. I seek forgiveness. But can forgiveness truly come to someone who took 4 lives even if he changed? With pain that can never be undone, Those final words drifted quietly into the sterile air of the execution chamber. Each name on today's list is more than just a criminal. They mark the end of a deeper tragedy where justice, pain, and irreversible choices intersect. Whether you support or oppose the death penalty, these stories remind us that every action carries consequences and not everyone gets the chance to make things right. If you found this video meaningful, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. This is where we share death row stories, not just for you to know, but for you to reflect on. We'll see you in the next video.